With every kill, my power grows. Oh, uh, Halloween ends. Halloween Ends is the latest film from director David Gordon Green, director of such blockbuster films as Snow Angels, George Washington, and other horror movies like Your Highness and The Sitter. Do you remember The Sitter? You don't remember The Sitter. Halloween Ends is the ending of David Gordon Green's revamp of the Halloween franchise. This all started in 2018 with Halloween 2018. Not to be confused with Halloween 1978, which Halloween 2018 was the sequel for. Halloween Ends finds Laurie Strode and her daughter 4 years later, attempting to move on and find some kind of sense of normalcy after the frankly insane events of Halloween and Halloween Kills. Michael Myers has not been seen since that night 4 years ago, and exists as a kind of boogeyman whose evil haunts the town, which now seems to be supernaturally infected with it. Simultaneously, we're also following Corey, a new character who has been ostracized in the town of Haddonfield following a tragic accident in which he finds himself blamed for by the townspeople. With his revamp, Gordon Green brought the franchise back to basics and took away all the convoluted lore that had kind of sprung up over the sequels. Sam Hain, anybody? And by bringing Jamie Lee Curtis back to the franchise, free of any of that baggage and directly tying it to the first one, he was able to explore some really interesting themes, especially when it came to ideas of trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder that I thought, while not handled with the greatest nuance, was at least interesting. Now, a lot of that goodwill for me was squandered with the sequel Halloween Kills, which really felt like an extended epilogue, as opposed to a film that justified its existence in its own right. There are a lot of interesting ideas in Halloween Ends, and some of it works, but a lot of the movie falls apart scene to scene, because frankly it's kind of trying to be too many movies. When the movie was focusing on Corey, I found it to be genuinely compelling. I really liked the actor, and I thought his performance was pretty good for the most part. Now, when it comes to the story of Laurie Strode and her daughter, which does intersect with the Corey story, it just feels undercooked. It doesn't feel like the writers' hearts were in it. You can tell that they found the Corey story more compelling and really wanted to go down that path, but had kind of written themselves into a corner by needing to make this the capper to Laurie Strode's story. Another constant problem in this series that feels dialed up to 11 in Halloween Ends are the side characters. Since Gordon Green's first Halloween in 2018, the side characters have often infused a tonally inappropriate sense of comedy into the film, and very rarely do they feel like real people. They are cartoon characters who are there to have a silly bit or be a caricature of a bully, a caricature of a abused teen or an abusive father or of an alcoholic. Everything just kind of feels like caricature and stereotype. And this is especially evident with the black characters in the films. On top of that, all the characters who are meant to be cannon fodder are so ludicrously shitty that they fail to be characters. They're simply meant to be objects of our ire so that we clap when they get their just desserts. Where the movie ultimately falls apart for me is in the relationship between the character of Corey and Laurie Strode's daughter Allison. We are meant to kind of see them as this great love story of two misunderstood people, and it's kind of tragic and horrific. But ultimately, I just don't buy it. None of the romance beats really make sense. A lot of it is really just insisted in the dialogue, and that's really a problem with the script in general. The script is pretty awful, especially in the dialogue. I just never bought their love story, and the entire movie hinges on it. And that becomes a real big problem. On top of that, I found the hostility towards Laurie's character in the movie from the town. I understand how it's trying to draw a comparison between Laurie and Michael and Corey, it just feels very half-baked and often boils down to characters telling Laurie that she's responsible for Michael Myers' murder spree. It just doesn't ring true to me, especially with the ferocity in which those accusations are hurled at Laurie, who is also still a victim herself, who lost her daughter. And that's kind of the unfortunate thing, is as I watched the movie, I kept going, I like this idea. I like this idea. I like what they're doing here. But ultimately, none of it really hangs together cohesively because the script is so slapdash and sloppy and trying to do too many things at once that it all just kind of feels like a big old jumble. When the Corey story is front and center, I think the movie has some genuine kick to it. But as soon as it becomes about his relationship with Allison or Laurie's relationship to the town, it feels like it could not give less of a shit. Ultimately, I'm torn. There are ways in which I think Halloween Kills is a more kind of cohesive and competent film, but this film was also far more ambitious, despite the fact that it was a mess, and I did enjoy some of its ambitions. At the time, I gave Halloween Kills a rating that was probably a little more generous than it deserved because I had just started going back to the theaters, so it was just nice to be in a theater. Overall, I think I prefer the messiness and ambition of Halloween Ends, even if the script ultimately doesn't hang together. So I give Halloween Ends a 5 out of 10. Make sure to come back later this weekend where I'll be reviewing Black Adam. And for my book recommendation for this video, I'm going to recommend Grant Morrison's Luda. Check it out. It is a crazy book. All right. Have a good one, guys.